Revenge with Karen.
The air conditioning in the conference room was humming that specific, rattling death rattle that usually means a compressor is about to blow its brains out. I should know. I negotiated the AC maintenance contract for this building back when Trevor was still eating paste in kindergarten. But right now, the only thing louder than the dying AC was the sound of my own patience evaporating. Trevor, 24 years old, MBA that probably still smelled like the laminate it was printed on. He was wearing a suit that was too tight in the ankles and too loose in the shoulders, looking like a shaved alpaca that had been dressed by a blind tailor. He sat at the head of the mahogany table. Mahogany I sourced from a sustainable supplier in 2014, by the way, and tapped his manicured fingers on a stack of files. My files. So, Ava, he said. The way he said my name tasted like he was spitting out a stale almond. We're pivoting. Pivoting, I repeated. My voice was flat, desert flat, Nevada highway at 3 a.m. flat. I didn't smoke, but in moments like this, I felt like my lungs were lined with 20 years of unfiltered Marlboro ash just from breathing in the toxicity of this room. Exactly, Trevor beamed, his teeth blindingly, aggressively white. They looked like chiclets cemented into a shark's jaw. Board feels that operations manager is a very legacy title. It gives off 2005 energy. We're moving towards a holistic workspace experience model. We need fresh eyes, digital natives, people who understand that a building isn't just walls, it's a vibe. I stared at him. I've managed 3 million square feet of commercial real estate in the hottest commercial district in Nevada for 11 years. I've handled floods, fires, EA raids on tenants, and a CEO who tried to expense a stripper pole as structural support. I know every easement, every utility line, and every zoning loophole within a 50-mile radius. And this kid, whose resume probably listed proficient in TikTok as a hard skill, was telling me about vibes. Trevor, I said, leaning back. The leather chair creaked. I manage the physical reality of this company. The lease you're sitting on. I renegotiated the writer 6 months ago to save us 40 grand a year on property tax. That's not a vibe, that's math. He waved a hand dismissively like he was swatting away a fly. And that's great, Ava, really. Super thankful for your service. But we're bringing in a new team. My team, we're rebranding the entire park, the Nexus. It's going to be huge. And frankly, your contract. It doesn't fit the new aesthetic. The silence that followed was heavy. It was the kind of silence that usually precedes a car crash or a lawsuit. I looked at him, really looked at him, and realized he wasn't joking. This wasn't a negotiation. This was an execution. By the way, if you're enjoying watching a woman with a mortgage get executed by a human fidget spinner, do me a favor and hit subscribe. Maybe like the post too. It fuels the rage engine, and trust me, we're gonna need a lot of fuel where we're going. Anyway, back to the slaughter. You're firing me, I stated. We're sunsetting your role, he corrected, flashing that smarmy grin again, effective immediately. HR has already processed the paperwork. Severance is, well, per the standard clause, 2 weeks. We need your badge and your laptop. Now, 2 weeks. 11 years of keeping this glass and steel monstrosity from collapsing under the weight of its own ego, and I get 2 weeks of pay and a kick in the teeth. My blood turned to slush. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't fear. It was a cold, sharp clarity. It felt like swallowing an ice cube whole. Fine, I said. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't throw the pitcher of lukewarm cucumber water at his head, even though the physics of the trajectory played out beautifully in my mind. I just stood up. Great. Love the attitude, Trevor chirped, mistaking my shock for compliance. He spun his laptop around, brand new MacBook Pro that he clearly didn't know how to use properly. I'll just need you to sign this NDA on the tablet outside. Oh, and Ava, make sure you clear your personal stuff out of the office by noon. We have the painters coming in at 1, going for Arctic gray on the walls. I walked out of the conference room, my heels clicking on the polished concrete floor like gunshots. My office was down the hall. It was a corner unit, not big. It had a view of the desert mountains and the parking lot. The parking lot I designed. The parking lot where the CEO, Mr. Henderson, parked his obscene Ferrari every morning. I grabbed a cardboard box from the supply closet. I started packing. My stapler. My framed certification from the Institute of Real Estate Management. A dried-out succulent that had survived longer than most of the marriages in this building. I could hear Trevor in the hallway, laughing with one of his new hires, a girl named Kayla who looked like she was 12 and dressed like she was going to Coachella. Yeah, the old guard is out. Trevor was saying, his voice carrying like a foghorn of stupidity. She didn't even fight it, total rollover. We're gonna gut the admin permissions this afternoon, reset everything to my biometrics. I paused. This afternoon. I looked at my computer screen. They hadn't locked me out yet. Rookie mistake. The commercial real estate game, you cut the digital throat before you cut the physical one. You lock the account while the person is still in the meeting. But Trevor was too busy high-fiving himself to follow protocol. I sat down. My hands weren't shaking. They were steady as rock. I opened the shared drive. There it was. The master operations folder. The folder I built. The folder that contained the digital skeleton of the entire company. Trevor had left his own session active on the shared server. I could see his icon hovering over a folder labeled Rebranding Assets. He wasn't paying attention to the back end. He was looking at logos. I didn't delete anything. That would be amateur hour. That would get me sued. No, I did something much simpler. I went into the user permissions settings for the sublease agreements, the deeply buried, pouring PDF files that dictated who legally owned the rights to use the land beneath the buildings. I saw my name listed as primary administrator. I saw Trevor's name listed as read only. I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a coyote spotting a limp rabbit. I dragged a specific set of files titled Easement Addendums 2018 to 2024, and Land Use Authorization Shell Corp B, onto my personal cloud drive. I opened the system logs and turned off the notification sound for external export. Hey, Ava, Trevor yelled from the doorway, making me jump. He was leaning against the frame, holding a green juice. Chop, chop. Noon is approaching. Just deleting my personal emails, Trevor, I said, my voice sweet as poisoned honey. Wouldn't want you to see my cat pictures. Whatever, he rolled his eyes. Just go. I grabbed my box. I walked past him. I smelled his cologne, something that smelled like musk and desperation. Good luck with the rebranding, Trevor, I said, stepping into the elevator. I hear Arctic Gray is very unforgiving if you don't prep the primer correctly. We'll be fine, he sneered. We're disruptors. The elevator doors closed, cutting off his face. I stood alone in the metal box, descending to the lobby. The weight of the box in my arms felt heavy, but inside my chest, a fuse had been lit. Thought they were disrupting the industry. Honey, they just disrupted the wrong woman. They thought they fired an employee. They didn't realize they just declared war on the landlord. The Nevada sun hit me like a physical blow the second the automatic doors slid open. It was 108 degrees in the shade, the kind of dry heat that desiccates you before you even know you're sweating. Usually, I hate it. Today, it felt appropriate. The world was burning. Why shouldn't the air match? I walked to my car, a 2016 Ford Explorer that had seen better days. Practical, reliable, invisible, just like me. I tossed the box of my office life into the passenger seat. The stapler rattled against the ceramic pot of the dead succulent. It sounded like bones in a bag. I sat there for a minute, gripping the steering wheel. The leather was burning hot, searing my palms. I didn't let go. I needed the pain. I needed to focus. 11 years. I had missed my niece's baptism for a zoning hearing for this company. I had worked through a bout of pneumonia because the fire inspector was coming, and I was the only one who knew where the updated sprinkler schematics were. I had given them my blood, sweat, and weekends, and they replaced me with a kid who probably thought escrow was a type of salad dressing. I started the car and drove. I didn't go to a bar. I didn't go to my sister's house to cry. I went home. My house is a small stucco box on the edge of Henderson, right where the suburbs give way to the scrub brush and dirt. It's quiet. It's organized. It's my fortress. I walked inside, kicked off my heels, and poured myself a glass of lukewarm tap water. I didn't deserve ice, not yet. I went straight to the spare bedroom. Most people use their spare room for guests or Peloton bikes they never use. I used mine for storage, not just any storage. I have a habit. Call it paranoia, call it professionalism, call it the result of working in an industry where a handshake means nothing without a notary stamp. I keep copies, hard copies. Every major contract I ever negotiated, every addendum I signed, every city permit application, I printed a duplicate for my personal archives. It started years ago when a previous boss tried to blame me for missing permit. I produced the copy with his signature on it, and he shut up. Since then, I've been a hoarder of bureaucracy. I pulled a heavy plastic bin from the bottom shelf. It was labeled Master Lease/Land, Use 2012 Present. Dust motes danced in the sliver of sunlight cutting through the blinds. I sat on the floor, ignoring the ache in my knees. I flipped past the utility contracts, past the janitorial service agreements. I was looking for the bedrock. Business Park, where the company headquarters sat, wasn't owned by the company. That's a common misconception. Companies rarely own their land, it ties up capital. No, the land was owned by a holding company, a shell entity created by the original founders back in the 90s. The company I just got fired from, Vortex Innovations, formerly Smith & Wesson Realty, before the first rebrand, leased the land from that shell entity. I found it. A thick document, bound with a rusted metal clip. Master Ground Lease Agreement. I flipped to the back. My eyes scanned the legalese that most people gloss over. The boilerplate. To me, boilerplate is poetry. It's where the knives are hidden. I remembered a conversation from 5 years ago. The old CEO, Mr. Henderson's father, a man who was a tyrant, but at least a competent one, had been worried about a hostile takeover, wanted to make sure the land couldn't be sold out from under him. So, we drafted a very specific, very unusual clause regarding lease renewal and authorized liaisons. I found Clause 14. B. Renewal of this master lease is contingent upon annual certification of compliance with City Zoning Ordinance 44B. Said certification must be submitted and signed by the designated operations liaison. I ran my finger down the page to the addendum filed 3 years ago. Designated operations liaison, Ava Sanderson. I stopped. I read it again. It didn't say the current operations manager. It said Ava Sanderson. Specifically, me, named personally. Old man Henderson had trusted me more than his own board of directors. He put my name there to ensure that if anyone tried to screw with the property, they'd have to go through me. He died 2 years ago. New CEO, his idiot son, never read the old contracts. Trevor definitely hadn't read them. I checked the dates. The annual certification was due. I looked at my watch. It was October 12th. The certification was due October 15th, in 3 days. If the certification wasn't filed, the lease didn't just accrue a fee. It didn't just go into arbitration. According to Clause 14. C. Nuclear Option Clause, Old man Henderson inserted to poison the well for potential raiders. If the certification lapsed, the lease terminated immediately, and the property rights reverted to the shell entity's control. And who was the registered agent for the shell entity? A senile lawyer in Reno who forwarded all mail to. I scrambled to another box. LLC correspondence. I found a letter from 6 months ago. The lawyer had retired, had transferred the administrative power of attorney for the shell company's day-to-day operations to the current site manager to save on fees. Me, again. Technically, legally, and contractually, I held the keys to the castle, and they had just thrown me into the moat. A laugh bubbled up in my throat. It sounded jagged, like grinding gears. Trevor was picking out paint colors for the walls. He was worried about the vibe. Meanwhile, entire legal foundation of his shiny new office was resting on a piece of paper that was currently sitting on my lap, 3 days away from expiring. I wasn't just an employee they fired. I was the load-bearing wall they just took a sledgehammer to. I reached for my phone. I didn't call the company. I didn't call a lawyer yet. I called the one person who could confirm if my read on the zoning ordinance was still valid. City planning, this is Barb. Barb, I said, leaning back against the dusty boxes, feeling the adrenaline start to replace the shock. It's Ava. Don't ask why, but I need you to pull the file on the Vortex lot. I need to know who the city recognizes as the signatory for the parking structure. Ava, Barb rasped. She sounded like she was 3 cigarettes into a 5-minute break. I thought you were prepping for that big investor thing on Friday. Oh, plans changed, Barb, I said, staring at a spider crawling across the ceiling. We're pivoting. The Department of Building and Safety smells like floor wax and despair. It's a drab, beige building downtown where dreams go to die in triplicate. To most people, it's purgatory. To me, it's the armory. I walked in at 8:15 a.m. I was wearing my civilian clothes, jeans, and a dark blouse, but I still walked like I owned the place. Because in a way, I did. I've spent more time leaning on these counters than I have in my own living room. Barb was behind the glass partition, looking like a gargoyle that had decided to take up vaping. She was 60, with hair dyed a shade of red that doesn't exist in nature and fingernails long enough to slice a throat. We've been trading favors for a decade. I expedite her permit applications when she needs a win for her boss. She loses paperwork for me when I need to stall a code inspector. It's a beautiful, symbiotic relationship based on mutual hatred of everyone else. Well, if it isn't the queen of the desert, Barb grunted, not looking up from her screen. You sound weird on the phone yesterday. What's the scrape? No scrape, Barb. Just a clarification, I said, sliding a Starbucks cup under the slot in the glass. Extra caramel, 3 shots. Her bribe of choice. She took it, sniffed it, and nodded. All right. I pulled the file. Vortex Innovations, formerly Smith & Wesson, formerly that big ugly box on Highland Drive. She slapped a thick folder onto the counter. I flipped it open. I ignored the blueprints. I went straight to the authorized party sheet. There it was. Ava Sanderson. Status, active, so I said, keeping my voice casual. If hypothetically someone wanted to revoke the parking easement for that lot, say, private event or maintenance, Barb looked at me over her glasses. Her eyes were sharp beads of black glass. Ava, you know the code. The authorized liaison has full discretion over emergency access restriction for up to 48 hours without a court order. Why, you got potholes? Something like that, I murmured. Big potholes. Maybe a sinkhole. And Barb continued, tapping a long red nail on the document, according to this update from last month. Lease on the auxiliary lot, the one they use for the overflow parking, technically expired on the 1st. It's running on a month-to-month courtesy extension. I froze. I knew about the master lease. I had forgotten about the auxiliary lot. The auxiliary lot was where the VIPs parked. It was the paved strip right in front of the main entrance. Courtesy extension granted to whom? I asked. To you, Barb smirked. The bill goes to the shell company, but the permit is in your name. If you withdraw the permit, the lot becomes unincorporated private property instantly. Anyone parking there is technically trespassing. I felt a shiver of pure, malicious delight run down my spine. It was better than orgasm. It was better than finding a $20 bill in an old coat. Thanks, Barb, I said. You're a lifesaver. I know. She took a slurp of the coffee. You look like hell, by the way. They working you hard? Oh, you know, I said, gathering the papers. New management. Lots of energy. I walked out of the building with a copy of the permit in my bag. The heat was rising again, shimmering off the asphalt. I got in my car and unfolded the city map I kept in the glove box. It was old-school paper. I traced the property lines of the Vortex office park. Trevor and his branding team saw a campus. They saw glass facades and potential spots for selfie walls. They saw a playground. I looked at the map and saw the truth. I saw property lines, easements, utility rights-of-way, and zoning variances. I saw a delicate house of cards held together by my signature. The CEO, Mr. Henderson, didn't own his empire. He was a squatter in a kingdom built by his dead father and managed by the woman he just fired. They thought they could just swap me out, like I was a toner cartridge. They forgot that I'm the one who programmed the printer. I started the engine. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Miller HVAC. Miller was the head of the maintenance crew I'd hired 5 years ago. Honest guy. Good work ethic. Chain smoker. Text, hey boss, new kid Trevor just fired us. Said our uniforms aren't on brand. Brought in some guys from a gig app. They don't even have tools. Just wanted to say thanks for the work over the years. I stared at the screen. Miller had 3 kids. He'd come in on Christmas Day once when a pipe burst. My grip tightened on the phone until the case creaked. It wasn't just me. They were purging everyone. They were treating people like glitches in their software upgrade. I texted back, sit tight, Miller. Don't take another job yet. I might have a big project for you on Friday. Cash pay, double time. Miller replied instantly, I'm in. Who are we fixing? I looked at the Vortex building in the distance, shimmering in the haze. We're not fixing anything, I whispered to the empty car. We're breaking everything. I put the car in drive. I had the map. I had the permit. Now I needed the ammunition. I drove to a diner on the outskirts of town, the kind of place where the waitress calls you honey and the menu hasn't changed since the Reagan administration. I ordered coffee, black, and a plate of hash browns. I needed grease and caffeine, the fuel of the vengeful. While I waited, I made the mistake of opening Instagram. I don't post much, mostly pictures of the desert or my cat, Buster, but I followed the company account. I had to, for monitoring purposes. There was a new story up, posted 20 minutes ago. It was a video, shaky cam, vertical format. It started with a close-up of Trevor's face, filtered to look like he had the skin of a poreless dolphin. What's up, Nexus family? He shouted into the phone. The background noise was loud, drills, hammering. We are day 1 into the transformation. Out with the dusty, depressing cubicles, with the open concept energy, he panned the camera. My stomach dropped. They were in the main lobby. A crew of guys, young, wearing t-shirts that said Task Rabbit or something similar, were ripping out the reception desk. That desk was custom mahogany. It cost $12,000. They were smashing it with sledgehammers, laughing. Then, the camera swung to a pile of debris in the corner. My heart stopped. Sitting on top of a pile of drywall and broken wood was a framed photo. It was a picture of the original groundbreaking ceremony from 20 years ago. Old man Henderson, the mayor, and me, fresh out of college, wearing a terrible oversized blazer, holding shovels. Trevor zoomed in on the photo. Literal fossils, he narrated, chuckling. Goodbye to the boomer energy. We're manifesting future vibes only. He kicked the frame. The glass shattered. I put my phone down on the table, very gently. Boomer energy. I'm 45, you little shit. I'm Gen X. We don't manifest, we survive. The waitress dropped off my coffee. You okay, Han? You look like you're about to murder someone. Just planning a party, I said, staring at the steam rising from the cup. Must be a hell of a party, she muttered, walking away. My phone buzzed again. It was Miller. He sent a photo. It was an invoice. Subject, unpaid services August/September. Amount due, $14,500. Below it, screenshot of an email from Trevor. Hey Miller, yeah, we're auditing past invoices. Since we're terminating the vendor relationship, we're putting a hold on all payouts until we verify the work was actually essential. The vibe of the AC was kinda off anyway. We'll circle back in Q4. The vibe of the AC was off. Miller is a guy who buys his work boots at Walmart because he spends his money on his daughter's braces. This trust fund MBA was stiffing him on 15 grand because he didn't like the vibe of the compressor. That was it. That was the moment the scale tipped. Before, I was going to leverage the lease to get a severance package. Maybe a nice apology. Now I wanted to burn their village. I opened my laptop right there on the sticky diner table. I pulled up a spreadsheet. I started a new tab. I named it the butcher's bill. I started listing everything. 1. Unpaid invoices to Miller. 2. The unpaid invoices to the landscape crew. I texted the foreman. He confirmed they were stiffed too. 3. The fire code violations I knew they were creating by tearing down that reception wall. It hit a structural pillar. 4. The labor violations of using unlicensed gig workers for demolition in a commercial zone. I needed more. I needed the internal comms. I needed to see what they were saying to the board. I remembered the door. Every system, there's a door left open. Usually, it's incompetence. With Trevor, it was arrogance. When he revoked my access, he probably just deleted my Active Directory profile. He didn't know about the legacy admin account. The legacy admin account was created in 2010 for the IT migration. Username, admin root. Password, SWR 2010. I had never used it. It was a break glass in case of emergency login. I typed it into the remote access portal. Connecting, verifying, my breath hitched. If they had updated the firewall, this wouldn't work. Login successful. I was in. I was inside the network, ghost mode. I navigated to the finance folder. I found a file titled Rebranding Budget/Cost Cutting. I opened it. Strategy, delay vendor payments to boost Q3 liquidity for launch party. Strategy, replace legacy ops management. High salary with junior brand ambassadors, low salary. Target savings, $250K. And then the kicker, a line item for launch event. Ferrari rental for CEO entrance, $4,000. Champagne Tower, $8,000. They were stealing Miller's money to rent a Ferrari for Mr. Henderson. I took a sip of my coffee. It was bitter. It was perfect. I downloaded everything, every memo, every budget sheet, every smug email where they joked about the old cow, me, and the grease monkeys, Miller. I had the map, I had the permit, and now I had the motive. I texted Miller back, Friday, 10 a.m., bring the truck and bring a tow hitch. Miller, you got it, boss. What are we hauling? I typed trash, very expensive trash. I needed a lawyer, but not just any lawyer. I didn't need a polished corporate attorney from a firm with 3 last names and a glass elevator. I needed a legal pit bull. I needed someone who operated out of a strip mall next to a vape shop and knew how to weaponize a comma. I needed Saul. Well, his name was actually Gary, but in my head, he was Saul. Gary's office was in a complex that smelled of sun-baked asphalt and Subway sandwiches. His waiting room had a flickering fluorescent light and a stack of Golf Digest magazines from 2018. Ava, Gary shouted when I walked in. He was wearing a rumpled suit and looked like he hadn't slept in a week. To what do I owe the pleasure? Finally ready to sue that HOA about the palm trees? Bigger, Gary, much bigger. We went into his office. I laid it all out. The master lease, the zoning permit with my name on it, the unpaid vendor invoices, unauthorized demolition, the legacy admin emails I downloaded, which he advised me to print and then forget how I got them for plausibility. Gary read the master lease clause. He adjusted his glasses. He read it again. A slow, terrifying grin spread across his face. Clause 14. See, he whispered reverently. The nuclear option. I haven't seen one of these since the 90s. This is beautiful, Ava. It's archaic, draconian, completely enforceable because the original signatory, Mr. Henderson SR, is dead and the trust never amended it. Can we do it? I asked. Do it, Gary laughed. We can destroy them, but we have to be surgical. If we move too early, they get an injunction. If we move too late, they claim implied consent. He pulled out a yellow legal pad. Here's the play. The lease renewal requires certification by October 15th. Today is the 12th. You, as the designated operations liaison, have not certified it. You are not going to certify it. Instead, you are going to file a notice of noncompliance and lease termination with the county clerk. When? We file it Friday morning, Gary said, at 8:59 a.m., the moment the clerk's office opens. That gives them zero time to react before their little party starts at noon. Once that stamp is on the paper, the land rights revert to the shell company. Since you hold the power of attorney for the shell companies day-to-day, I can evict them, I finished. Technically, Gary wagged a finger, you are securing the asset against unauthorized use. You're protecting the shell company's property from squatters who are conducting unpermitted construction. And the cars? I asked. The parking lot. If the lease is terminated, any vehicle on the premises is trespassing. You have the right to remove them at the owner's expense. Nevada Revised Statute 487.038. He looked at me. But Ava, you know what happens when you pull this trigger, right? This isn't just a lawsuit. This is a public execution. You'll never work in corporate real estate in this town again. I thought about Trevor laughing at the fossils. I thought about Miller's unpaid invoice. I thought about 11 years of missing birthdays and holidays for a company that treated me like furniture. I don't want to work in corporate real estate again, Gary, I said. I'm thinking of getting into demolition. All right then, Gary cracked his knuckles. Let's draft the death warrant. We spent the next 4 hours writing. Every word had to be perfect. We drafted the notice to quit. We drafted the towing authorization orders. We drafted a cease and desist for the use of the company logo on the unauthorized signage. By the time I left, the sun was setting. Sky was a bruised purple. I sat in my car in the parking lot of the strip mall. I had the documents in a crisp manila envelope. They felt radioactive. I checked my phone. Another notification from the Vortex Instagram. Trevor posted a video, sneak peek of the whip for Friday. Racing #Lambo #Ferrari #success. He was sitting in the Ferrari. The one paid for with Miller's money. He was revving the engine in the parking lot. My parking lot. I zoomed in on the video. He was parked in spot #1, the spot reserved for the authorized liaison. He wasn't just parking in my spot, he was dancing on my grave. Enjoy the ride, Trevor, I whispered, putting the car in gear, because you're about to run out of road. The clock was ticking. 36 hours to showtime. Thursday morning, the day before the event. I walked into the post office at 9:00 a.m. sharp. I held a white envelope addressed to Compliance Officer, Vortex Innovations. This was the legal requirement. We had to give 24 hours constructive notice of the lease irregularity. It was a courtesy, a formality. I mailed it certified, return receipt requested. I knew exactly what would happen. The mail carrier would deliver it to the front desk at roughly 11:00 a.m. Trevor fired the receptionist and replaced her with a digital check-in kiosk, which I saw on his Instagram. The mail would be dumped in a bin. Kayla, the Coachella intern, would likely pick it up. She would see compliance and assume it was boring legal junk. She'd toss it on a pile to be scanned later. Trevor would never see it. The CEO would never see it. But the court would see that I sent it. I walked out of the post office and called Miller. It's done, I said. Copy that. Miller's voice was gravely. I talked to my buddy at Red Rock Towing, Big Sal. He's got 4 flatbeds and a wheel lift truck available for Friday morning. He says for bulk job, he'll give us a discount. No discount, I said, full price. Bill it to the vehicle owners. And Miller, tell Sal to bring the heavy-duty truck, the one they use for semis. Why? You expecting a tank? No, I said. But Mr. Henderson drives a Ferrari 488. It has very low clearance. I want to make sure we don't scratch it. Until it's on the hook. You're cold, boss. I love it. I spent the rest of the day watching the train wreck unfold from a distance. Trevor was live streaming again. He was frantic now. Okay, guys, minor hiccup, he was saying, sweating visibly through his tight shirt. The caterer is giving us some grief about the net 60 payment terms. But we're pivoting. We're getting food trucks. Food trucks are way more authentic anyway. I smiled. The caterer was likely my friend Brenda. I had texted her yesterday and casually mentioned that Vortex's credit rating was looking shaky. Brenda doesn't play with her money. Trevor was running around the office, yelling at the Task Rabbit guys. No, the banner goes over the old logo. We need to hide the Smith and Wesson sign. It's not on brand. He was pasting a vinyl banner over a stone monument that was listed as a protected architectural feature in the city code. I took a screenshot. Another violation, add it to the pile. At 4:00 p.m., my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. Hello, is this Ava Sanderson? A female voice. Young, harried, speaking. Hi, this is Kayla from, the Nexus, formerly Vortex. I'm the new experience coordinator. I know who you are, Kayla, right? Trying to set up the Wi-Fi for the outdoor press area, and the IT guy says we need the root password for the external router. He said you might have it? I paused. They were locked out of the outdoor internet. They couldn't live stream the event without it. I might, I said calmly. But I don't work there anymore, Kayla. I believe Trevor said I was a legacy issue. I know, she whispered, sounding like she was hiding in a closet. But Trevor is freaking out, screaming at everyone, please, just give me the code. I felt a tiny pang of sympathy. She was just a kid. But she was a kid working on the Death Star. I can't give you the code, Kayla. That would be a security breach. But tell Trevor that he should check the Master Ops folder on the shared drive. The one he was looking at when he fired me. The passwords are in there. Oh, okay, thank you. She hung up. I smiled. I had left a file in that folder. But it wasn't the passwords. It was a PDF titled System Passwords PDF. When he opened it, it would just be a single page. A picture of Danny DeVito holding a sign that said, "You gotta pay the troll toll." Petty? Yes. Professional? No. But I wasn't a professional anymore. I was a ghost. And ghosts are allowed to haunt people. I went to bed early that night. I slept like a baby. The kind of baby that knows a nuclear missile is scheduled to launch at 9:00 a.m. Friday, 8:30 a.m. I was standing in line at the Clark County Clerk's office. I was wearing my armor, a navy blue blazer, tailored slacks, and heels that could puncture a tire. I looked like the operations manager I was. I held the file, the notice of lease termination. The clerk, a woman named Janice who had seen everything from quickie divorces to murder indictments, took the papers. She stamped them. Clunk. The sound echoed in the quiet room. Filed, Oct. 14, 8:59 a.m. It was official. As of this second, Vortex Innovations and its DBA The Nexus had no legal right to occupy the parking lot or the common grounds of 4400 Highland Drive. Thank you, Janice, I said. Give him hell, Han, she winked. I walked out to the parking lot. Miller was waiting in his truck. Behind him, 3 massive flatbeds from Red Rock Towing were idling, their diesel engines rumbling like hungry beasts. We green? Miller asked, leaning out the window. He was smoking a Marlboro Red. We are green, I said. Move to the staging area. The abandoned Kmart lot down the street. Wait for my signal. The event starts at noon. We roll at 12:15, copy. They rolled out, a convoy of vengeance. I drove to the Vortex building alone. I parked across the street in the public lot of the strip mall. I had binoculars. The scene was chaotic. It set up a white tent in the middle of the parking lot, my parking lot. There were balloons. There was a DJ booth. There was a food truck selling artisanal tacos. And there, gleaming in the center of it all, was the Ferrari. Red, aggressive, parked diagonally across 2 handicapped spots. Perfect. I saw Mr. Henderson, the CEO, arriving in an Uber. He stepped out, looking sleek and oblivious in a linen suit. Trevor ran up to him, gesturing wildly, pointing at the tent, the balloons, the vibe. Henderson clapped him on the back. They were celebrating, they were high-fiving. They had no idea that the ground beneath their feet had just turned into quicksand. I checked my watch. 11:30 a.m. The press was arriving. A van from the local news station. A couple of bloggers with oversized cameras. This was exactly what Trevor wanted. Media coverage. Attention. Be careful what you wish for, I murmured. I opened my phone and sent a final email to the board of directors. I had drafted it last night. Subject: urgent compliance violation, and asset seizure. 2. Board of Directors CC. Legal Department. Dear board members, please be advised that due to failure to renew the master lease certification by the authorized liaison, me, and failure to rectify outstanding zoning violations, lease for the property at 4400 Highland Drive has been terminated effective 8:59 a.m. today. Furthermore, unauthorized vehicles on the property are subject to immediate removal under NRS 487.038. I strongly suggest you watch the new news. Regards, Ava Sanderson, former Operations Manager, current Administrator, Highland Land Holdings, LLC. I hit send. I watched the building. Takes about 15 minutes for an email to filter through the corporate server, get read by an assistant, and then panicked about 11:45 a.m. I saw a woman in a suit run out of the building, the general counsel. She was on her phone looking frantically around the parking lot. She spotted Trevor. She ran over to him. She grabbed his arm. I adjusted the focus on my binoculars. I could see Trevor's face. He looked confused, then annoyed. He waved her off, pointed at the cameras. He was saying, "Not now." He ignored the warning. He ignored the liar. He was too focused on his moment. 12:00 p.m. The music started, a heavy bass thrumming through the air. Trevor grabbed a microphone. "Welcome everyone to the Nexus," he screamed. The crowd clapped. I picked up my radio, a walkie-talkie I'd kept from my days coordinating construction crews. "Miller," I said, "it's showtime. Bring the rain." "Copy that, boss." Miller's voice crackled, rolling heavy. I put the car in drive. I pulled out of the strip mall. I drove across the street. I didn't drive to the visitor spots. I drove right up to the main gate. The security guard, a new guy, gig worker, stepped out to stop me. I held up my badge, not my employee badge, my city inspector liaison badge. "Official business," I said. He stepped back. The gate opened. I rolled in. Behind me, the tow trucks turned the corner, amber lights flashing, their air horns blasting. The music stopped. The heads turned. The wolf was in the fold. The sound of 4 heavy-duty diesel engines cuts through a chill-hop DJ set like a chainsaw through pudding. The crowd fell silent. The investors, holding their plastic cups of champagne, turned to look. The bloggers lowered their phones. I stepped out of my car. I slammed the door. I walked straight toward the tent. I didn't look at the crowd. I looked at the Ferrari. Miller's truck, a monstrous Peterbilt with RED Rock towing painted on the side in aggressive font, pulled up right behind the Italian sports car. The air brakes hissed, PSSHHHD, a sound that signaled the end of the party. Hey, what is this?" Trevor scrambled off the makeshift stage, his microphone feedbacking with a high-pitched squeal. "You can't be here. This is a private event." He ran toward me. He looked sweaty and manic. "Ava," he stopped, blinking, "what the hell are you doing?" "I told you to clear out." "I did clear out, Trevor," I said, my voice calm, projecting just enough for the news crews to hear. "I cleared out my personal effects. Now, I'm clearing out the unauthorized vehicles parked on private property." "Private property?" Mr. Henderson, the CEO, pushed through the crowd. "Ava, have you lost your mind? We own this property." "Actually, Mr. Henderson," I said, pulling the stamped document from my folder. "You don't, you lease it, or rather, you did lease it. As of 8:59 a.m., the lease was terminated due to noncompliance. You are currently trespassing on land managed by Highland Land Holdings, LLC. That's insane," Henderson stammered. "Who is the manager of this LLC?" "I am," I said. A camera flash went off. Then another. The reporter from Channel 8 motioned for her cameraman to get closer. "Trevor," Henderson yelled, "get security." "Security can't help you, sir," I said. "This is a civil enforcement action." I nodded at Miller. Miller grinned. He racked the slide on the hydraulic controls. The flatbed began to tilt. "Don't you touch that car," Trevor shrieked. "That's a rental. The deposit was 10 grand. Then you should have parked it legally," Miller grunted. He grabbed the tow hook. He walked over to the Ferrari. "Stop." Henderson lunged forward. Miller, man who has lifted AC units onto roofs in 115-degree heat, didn't even flinch. He just looked at the CEO. "Step back, sir. For your safety." He knelt down. He found the tow eyelet on the front of the Ferrari. Clank. The sound of metal hooking metal rang out. It was the sound of consequences. "Lift it," I said. The winch whined. The cable tightened. The beautiful, cherry-red Ferrari 488 shuddered and began to slide backward up the ramp. The crowd gasped. Someone in the back laughed. "This is a nightmare," Trevor shouted, grabbing his hair. "You're ruining the brand launch." "The brand?" I looked at him. Trevor, you don't have a brand. You have a logo and a lawsuit. You fired the people who actually ran this place. You stiffed the contractors who built it. And you forgot to read the contract that keeps the lights on. Ferrari was now at a 45-degree angle. Where are you taking it? Henderson screamed, his face turning purple. Impound Lot B, I said, checking my clipboard. It's about 20 miles out, cash only to release, and since it's Friday, they're closed until Monday morning. Monday? Trevor cried. We're paying daily on that. Pivot, I said. The second tow truck moved in. It headed for the artisanal taco truck. Hey, the taco guy yelled. I'm just the caterer. You have a vending permit for this specific zone? I asked. Trevor said he handled it. Trevor lied, I said. Hook it up. The chaos was absolute. The investors were retreating to their cars. The news crew was live streaming the entire thing. The chyron on the Channel 8 feed probably read, corporate launch towed away. Trevor stood there, defeated, watching his vibe getting hauled away on a flatbed. Mr. Henderson turned to his general counsel. Fix this. Now. Lawyer looked at the papers I had handed her. She looked at me. She looked at the CEO. I can't, she said, her voice shaking. She's right. The lease is dead. Clause 14, see, it's ironclad. Henderson looked at me with pure hatred. You planned this. I did, I admitted. I'm an operations manager, Mr. Henderson. Logistics is my job, and frankly, I'm very good at it. I turned and walked back to my car. Where are you going? Henderson yelled. To lunch, I said. Here, there's a great taco place across town. Since this one is indisposed, I got in my car. I didn't look back, but I could hear the winch whining as the second truck claimed its prize. I didn't go to lunch. I went home. I poured myself a glass of whiskey, the good stuff, a bottle old man Henderson gave me 10 years ago for Christmas, and I sat on my patio. I watched the Twitter feed on my iPad. The Nexus fail was trending locally. Then nationally. Video of the Ferrari being dragged up the ramp was everywhere. Someone had dubbed it with the Curb Your Enthusiasm theme song. Trevor's screaming face was already a meme. Caption: When the vibes don't pay the rent. By 2:00 p.m., Vortex Innovation stock had dropped 14%. By 4:00 p.m., the board of directors issued a press release. We are aware of the logistical challenges at today's event. We are conducting an internal review. Mr. Trevor Phillips has been placed on administrative leave pending an investigation. Administrative leave. Corporate speak for we're changing the locks. At 5:00 p.m., my phone rang. It was Mr. Henderson. I let it go to voicemail. At 5:05 p.m., it rang again. The general counsel. I answered. What do you want, Linda? Ava, she sounded exhausted. We need to talk. The board is freaking out. They want to know what it will take to reinstate the lease. I took a sip of whiskey. The ice clinked against the glass. Clause 14. C is irreversible, Linda. You know that. The land rights have reverted. Ava, please, we can't move the headquarters. The cost would bankrupt us. There has to be a number. There is a number, I said. Name it. I don't want money, I said. Well, I do. I want full severance for myself, tripled. I want Miller paid in full, plus interest, plus a retainer for the next 5 years. I want every vendor you stiffed paid by Monday. Done. Consider it done. And I continued, looking out at the desert sunset. I want the lease renegotiated, triple the rent. And the new contract designates a specific property management firm to handle all operations. Which firm? Mine, I said. Sanderson Logistics, LLC. I just filed the papers an hour ago. There was a long silence on the other end. You want us to hire you back as a consultant, to manage the building we fired you from? No, Linda. I don't want you to hire me. I'm the landlord's agent now. You don't hire me, you pay me. And if you don't like the vibe of the new contract, you can move your furniture out to the street. I have tow trucks on standby, she sighed. A deep, defeated sigh. I'll send the paperwork over. I hung up. The sun dipped below the mountains, painting the sky in violent shades of orange and red. I wasn't an employee anymore. I wasn't a legacy issue. I was the one holding the keys. I thought about Trevor. He was probably at a bar somewhere, explaining to anyone who would listen that he was sabotaged. He'd never understand. He thought business was about branding, about logos, about noise. He didn't understand that business is about the plumbing. It's about the wires in the walls. It's about the boring, dusty contracts in the basement. If you respect the foundation, house stands. If you try to paint over the cracks, well, the house falls on you. I raised my glass to the empty desert. Pivot, I whispered. I took a drink. It burned and it tasted like victory. The Ferrari was still in the impound lot. It would stay there until Monday. I had a feeling Monday was going to be a very busy day. But for now, the AC was humming, the phone was silent, and the vibe was absolutely perfect.
And that's how it all played out. Funny how life can twist itself into knots and then somehow straighten out again.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening and being here.